We are now only a few days away from the start of the Monaco Grand Prix weekend, and the question on people's minds are, will the new upgrades that were meant to go on the cars for the Imola race help the likes of Ferrari, Mercedes and Aston Martin to close the gap to the mighty Red Bull team? Well, today we're going to be taking a look at that, and also taking a look at some of the data from previous races to see who is looking strong in the midfield. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content. Now, let's get into the video. As usual, I'll be talking about the likes of Mercedes, Aston Martin and Ferrari a little bit later on, so stick around for that. As I mentioned at the start of the video, with Imola being cancelled, the upgrades that the teams were planning to bring to that race will instead be debuting at the tight and twisty streets of Monte Carlo, and this has potential to lead to a shaking up of the order. Not only this, but Monaco is unlike any other circuit on the Formula 1 calendar, as this circuit is the lowest speed circuit of all the races of the season, and the teams tried to throw as much downforce as possible due to the straight line performance not being important at all. Instead, it is all about trying to generate as much downforce and grip as possible. The Monaco Grand Prix circuit benefits a car that has generally got very good mechanical grip, but the question is, in the midfield, which team will this typically benefit? One midfield team that Monaco will probably not suit, sadly, is the Williams. Alex Albon has been, so far this season, producing miracles in the Williams. The Williams is a very slippery car in a straight line and doesn't produce much drag, but the reason for this is that the Williams car also doesn't produce a lot of downforce and is generally lacking in grip. We could see that, for example, when we look back at the Australian Grand Prix, when Alex Albon lost the back end of his Williams and crashed out of the race. You can also see this when, for example, comparing the qualifying lap of Valtteri Bottas in the Alfa Romeo to Albon in the Williams at Miami. Alfa Romeo is not particularly a strong car either this year, and has probably been the second worst car overall in terms of pace. But as the data shows, you can see just how Bottas is actually stronger and the fastest car overall in the corners and the twisty sections of the Miami circuit. He is also faster on the exit of corners, showing that the Alfa Romeo does have a little bit more downforce and also a little bit more mechanical grip on the exit of corners. This lack of grip is something that could really hinder the Williams team this weekend, and with a lack of any straights around Monte Carlo, Albon will not be able to maximise the strengths of that Williams car. But what about a team that might actually benefit from Monaco being all twists and turns with no straights in sight? Well, one team that I think has the opportunity to perform well in the midfield and be much improved from what we've seen and from what has in general been a very difficult start to the year is the McLaren team. McLaren are, as this graph shows, dismally slow in a straight line, which for many circuits has been a negative. However, they have managed to get very good exits from corners and typically have been very strong through the corners as well, which you can see when comparing the fastest laps in qualifying from Miami between the McLarens and the Alpines. This shows us that potentially for the team, Monaco could be a very good race for them. McLaren have also been typically decent over one lap this year. In Saudi Arabia, Piastri was able to get through to Q3, and in Australia, Norris had a particularly good showing, and both of those circuits are also very smooth, much like the Monaco surface, which could be a good omen. Matching the fact that McLaren is decent over one lap with the fact that the McLaren weakness of low straight line speed is not going to be an issue, and also that overtaking around Monaco is virtually impossible, that means that both Norris and Piastri could have a very good weekend. They just need to make sure that they keep it out of the walls in those all-important qualifying laps. But what about the main teams? Which team is looking strong, and which team is maybe not looking as good for the Monaco Grand Prix? Well, let's start with the Mercedes team. For Mercedes and the Silver Arrows, Monaco will be one of the most important races of the entire season for them. Mercedes have been really struggling over bumpy circuits and tight and twisty circuits with high curbs since the beginning of 2022 for the most part. They have though managed the occasional flashes of brilliance, but overall it has been very difficult for them. However, in Monaco they are going to be bringing a raft of changes to the car, and the changes are as follows. A new front suspension, floor, and the bodywork is also changing. We're not too sure yet what the bodywork changes entail, but for me, the most important changes is the floor and front suspension. One of the reasons Mercedes has really struggled over the curbs is because they've had to run the car stiff. This stiffness essentially led to giving very poor ride quality. Monaco may have a smooth surface, but it is still one of the bumpiest circuits on the calendar, meaning that the new floor and front suspension will be tested to their limits. If this works out for them, then we could see Mercedes finally getting back into the fight for the first time consistently since 2021. And for Ferrari, Monaco is also a big race for them and their entire season. The upgrades being brought to the Monaco for Ferrari, similar to Mercedes, will go a long way to determining how the rest of their 2023 season will go. Ferrari are also planning an upgrade for Spain as well as Monaco, and from there we will have a much better idea of just how the rest of their year will go. Monaco should be a decent race for the Ferrari team based on how 2023 played out so far. Ferrari has been fairly decent through the corners and over the tight and twisty sections. We can see that when looking back to Baku, where Charles Leclerc of course took pole position. Now, Charles may be a bit of a specialist when it comes to Baku, but it cannot be denied that the Ferrari was in general stronger there, as you can see when comparing Verstappen to Leclerc. Ferrari's biggest issue has been rear instability. This usually occurs when the floor of the Ferrari bottoms out, which is what we saw in Bahrain with Sainz during practice and also with Leclerc during qualifying last time out in Miami. To try and fix this, Ferrari are bringing a new floor and rear suspension design. If they can perfect this and run the car closer to the ground without sealing the floor off and losing all downforce, then we could see Ferrari take a step forward and be closer to their main rivals, which are of course the Red Bull team. Charles Leclerc, however, has got to get this mysterious Monaco curse out of the way, as this curse has followed him throughout his entire time in F1. In 2018, when driving for Alfa Romeo, he lost his brakes and slammed into the back of a Toro Rosso. In 2019, Leclerc was out in Q1 after Ferrari made a mistake by leaving him in the garage, and then in the race he was too aggressive in his overtakes and eventually had to retire. In 2021, Leclerc took pole position and then crashed, which resulted in him not being able to race. And finally last year, Leclerc took pole position and was leading the race comfortably until Ferrari got the strategy wrong. With this in mind, the question is, what is next for Leclerc around these streets? Will he finally be able to break the curse? For Aston Martin, Monaco is shaping up, in my opinion, to be their best race of the year. Aston Martin's biggest weakness all year long has been their lack of straight line speed. Whilst I do believe that they are improving in that area, especially based on what we saw in Miami, it cannot be denied that the absolute strongest area of the car is its ability on the brakes and overall downforce. With this level of downforce in mind, I am expecting Monaco to be the strongest race so far for the Aston Martin team. It is not out of the realm that one of their drivers will score pole position, and both drivers could very easily end up in the top 5 finishing positions. In order for this to happen though, the team need to absolutely nail the entire weekend. The question is though, can any of the top teams take the fight to Red Bull? And in the midfield, who will come out on top this weekend? As usual, the midfield fight is looking as tight as ever, and anyone could come out on top. The question is though, what do you guys think? Who do you think will be taking the fight to Red Bull, and who do you think will be the top midfield team? Also, finally, this weekend, I will be live streaming a watch-along for qualifying and also potentially the race. Alongside this, I will be producing a data analysis video for both practice and qualifying, so be sure to be on the lookout for that. And as always, comment, leave a like, and subscribe for more F1 content. Thank you all so much for watching.